Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. Content is king when it comes to SEO, search engine optimization. Now, you may have heard of that before, but bottom line here is content is so important to raise you in the rankings when it comes to people doing searches for you. And I'm not talking about the paid search, the sponsored Google ads. I'm talking about organic SEO, just people doing a search and finding you. So you have to have the right content. And many times, and we've identified this here before, it's all about a story. You're telling a story. Doesn't matter what it is. You could be talking about tires on a car. You're selling tires. There's a story involved in what's the best tire for your vehicle. All of that. We're going to consult with somebody who coaches on storytelling. And we've learned so much from her in the past. Didn't even think about this aspect when it comes to content online and SEO, but it is so important. And she's back with us. Michelle Cutler joins us on the program. How you doing today?
I'm very well, Steve. Thank you. I'm excited.
Me too. And let's just jump right into this. Many times when you're searching for something or you see a link and you're like, oh, that's interesting. Let me click that. And you start reading the article and you realize, well, it's kind of long and I just wanted to find out about this one thing within the headline that I clicked. It's being done for a reason, because that helps with SEO rankings for that particular website. That's a given. There's got to be a certain number of words, certain number of types of words, keywords and such. But here's my personal frustration, if you will. Many times when you're reading that long article to get to the point, which you really want to learn, it gets very fluffy, in my opinion, because people aren't really telling a great story. They're just kind of moving you along because they want to keep, oh, and by the way, ads are popping up as you're reading that article to get to what you wanted to really initially learn about. But when it's a great story, whoa, you got me. You sucked me in. I don't care how long this article is. Would you feel the same exact way?
Yeah, definitely. And I can definitely tell, exactly like you said, when I'm reading something, I clicked on it because of a headline, and I'm about 4 paragraphs in, and I'm thinking, where exactly is this information I was looking for? And that is a bunch of padding, as you said. It's fluff, it's padding, it's strategic. It's there to build algorithmic power, towards this article. And then, of course, you have your links, your hyperlinks within an article that lead you elsewhere. And that's, I guess, where the rabbit hole, when people say they've gone down a rabbit hole, comes into play. But let's say we're talking about, rather than an article, well, let's say we're looking at your website or my website or someone's business website, whereas they're not going to have the same draw as an article because they don't have, the same power behind them as, Business Insider or New York Times or any, news outlet that has a real force into your news feed. So how do people find you? What is it? And as you said, it's organic. Aside from your paid ads, how do they organically find you? And that really comes down to you first knowing what your offerings are. What are you offering? And how would you define what you're offering so that those words become something that someone is already searching for? So they're not searching for your name. They're searching for what it is that you do without even knowing who you are yet.
Right. Yeah. And then you just happened to show up as the one with the information. However, you showed up because your website, and this is not really a discussion on optimizing your SEO. It's more of the content. But when you have the right content, backlinks, et cetera, you're showing up higher than the competition. And that's why somebody clicked you, initially. It's interesting to me how it's all about storytelling. Again, it's an article on tires. It could be whatever. There's a story to be told as opposed to just throwing, words on a screen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you an example. Using myself as an example, it's easiest. I first bought a URL for my website in 1998. Okay. I was an artist, a filmmaker. I had business cards, as we all did, that you give to people when you met them and talk to them. But I thought I'd like to have something online that's a portfolio of my work. And I had a friend help me. Back then, we didn't have templates. You know, you actually needed someone who could code and design.
Mm-hmm.
And it took about a year because I really didn't understand what it was I was trying to say. And at that time, too, it wasn't so savvy. You know, we weren't so savvy at that time. But I did buy the URL that's my name, which I think a lot of people did in the 90s and early 2000s were like, oh, I'm buying www.steveharvey. You know, like everyone's good, or Harper, everyone's going to, you know, buy their own name. So I was smart in doing that.
Congratulations times a million on that, by the way.
Sure, it's worth about $8,000. No, it's worth $8,000 now because all the other Michelle Cutlers would love to have, you know, our name as their URL. So I lucked out on that. But let's just say over the years, I just kind of reinvented my portfolio website without any way thinking about people searching for anything I did. It really was just a backup of meeting me in person, and then you could come and look at what I did. Now we're so at a point where, you know, a lot of what I do is remote, for example. So my website then has to not only present who I am so that you can trust me and you feel like I'm someone you might get to know and like to work with, but also you have to find me. And the world is much bigger now in that regard. And so I talked to a business strategist and an SEO expert on how to do this. And it was very uncomfortable. It was almost like going to like therapy to understand, because I was like looking at templates. I was like, oh, templates, headshots, you know, graphics, font, and colors. And she was like, why don't you first figure out what your offerings are? And I thought, oh my goodness, my offerings. And that's where your storytelling can really come into play, because all of the text that ends up on your website pages is what becomes part of how the search engines find you. So it's important to know what you're selling or who you are, or your services, in a way that many people will find you without even knowing that they're looking for you.
100%. And the content is so important, but I think we minimize the importance of it, especially nowadays. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm not the SEO expert, so I can't tell you how many words the article should have for, you know, the best optimization. It doesn't matter whether it's 15 words or, you know, if it's 1,000 words, it's got to be the right words.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and also, you know, a big thing is defining, you know, what your core narrative is. Like you could reflect on your journey, your values, the mission of your business, what experiences shaped your perspective and your offerings, and that language. If you're genuine about it, if it really does speak truthfully to you and what you do and your passion for what you do, and this is really for entrepreneurs or small business, right? Because you are every department basically in your business. You know, that language becomes your front window, your shingle. You know, it becomes your handshake in a way, and I think that can really feel like the hardest part. But once you get there, it should fit like a glove. Really, it should really feel like something an outfit you can walk around in and feel that it does identify who you are to the world.
How would somebody work with you to improve their content on their website or anything that they're working on when it comes to digital?
Well, I mean, I think first, again, it's just a long conversation at first to unpack. Sometimes it sounds kind of silly, but to unpack sort of your secret dreams, like that you have that's in there really deep inside, but you almost feel embarrassed to talk about. But it's so important to really tap into that to actually feel successful when success happens. Like being successful here's a good example. Like a long time ago, I worked in a talent agency, and I started as an assistant, and I was really good at it, and I was very good at, you know, juggling scheduling calls. I was great at making appointments and doing contracts and all of these things that I don't really want to do with my life, but I was good at them. And I realized, and then I was offered to move up in that business, and I thought, oh, whoops, that's not the business I wanted to be in. Um, I'm, I want to be good at the thing that I feel most passionate about, which is storytelling, which is working with people and helping them tell their stories for whatever need that they have, whatever platform that might be. But again, coming to this sort of point of synthesis takes some time, and it really does mean talking it out for a bit. And then once we start to identify, 3 or 4 core goals that you have, and then looking at where they come from, then we start to craft the narrative. One thing I found really interesting when working with an SEO strategist was that websites aren't linear. I would write something and I would think, and she would say, can you get this language also on the about page? I was like, why? It's on the home page. Why does it have to be on the about page too? And she said, because people don't read websites like a book. It's not a linear read. They might end up on your contact page through some other way that they got there. You don't know where people are going to land first, and you can't control where they're going to land first. And if they're only going to spend 30 seconds, I have an average time on my website of like 2 minutes that people spend 2 minutes to 2 minutes 46 seconds, which is really good.
Yeah.
Because I give them something to read, basically, some ideas, some questions, some nice images. But so you want people to, wherever they land, when they get there, to know really quickly who you are and what you're offering. And that becomes a bit of a strategic craft type of working, but we work to that point.
And thank you for that. And it's everything that you're saying is so important. And we didn't even talk about the blogs. Blogs.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to providing value to the audience, making sure it's unique and original. Side note here, don't copy from other websites and try to tweak it, because there will be just the kiss of death when it comes to SEO. It needs to be engaging at the same time. And there's something called keyword stuffing. I know we're jumping down an SEO rabbit hole here, but it goes right back to content where, let's say, I don't know, like I said before, best tires. Now I'm searching for the best tires for my car. Well, keyword stuffing, you want people to find your business because you sell the best tires. Again, hypothetical here. But if your content says, the best tires for your vehicle really originate at our company because we sell the best tires. And a lot of people recognize that we do have the best tires. You see the trend there where we're just trying to put that term in there as much as possible. And that's going to work against you. It's going to look spammy to Google and your readers.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And you're not going to rank high. So just, little thoughts there, but content by and large, how do you make it easy to read? I'm a big proponent, and this is just me. I love your input on this. Using short sentences. I try to, not as short as possible, but, little piece of information, period. On to the next sentence. I find it's easier to read. Just one thought there. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. I think that works. One thing you can do is read. I find when you read out loud, you surprise yourself by how uncomplicated you need to be to get a message across. I was recently I was asked to do a testimonial for this magazine called Poets and Writers for a function that they have called Groups, which is where people find other writers to create groups. And I was one of the originators in the beta version of that, and they asked me to write it or to do a testimonial. And so I wrote it. And then I had to do a video of it. I had to record myself. And I realized, I thought, oh my gosh, this is a mouthful. Like, it's just not coming out. It's fine to read, but it's difficult to say. And I think that you could even reverse engineer that to say, if you're writing something, writing about yourself, writing about your business, take a moment, step aside, go read it out loud, and see how easily it sort of comes off, falls out of your mouth, falls up the tongue, and how easy, and whether or not you lose value by editing it down. I mean, you don't want to become so brief that it doesn't really mean anything anymore, but you at the same time don't want to make it so complicated that the reader has to actually like trip over themselves to understand what you're trying to say, because by then they'll have already left. They would have already clicked off. So you have really a few seconds to get somebody.
You brought back a memory here, and back in the day, I was a news director and would write news copy. And there was a thing called AP style, Associated Press style. And back then, I learned at a very young age to write like you talk. Don't sound formal so that it'll sound more intelligent in your mind. And that came to me when you just said, speak out loud. You want to write like you talk in many regards.
Yeah, no, especially if what you're doing is, or like what I do, which is interactive. So I have a new client. This is pretty interesting, actually. I have a new client who wants to write her family, her life story as a screenplay. She had contacted someone about writing it as a memoir, but realized that because English is not her first language, although she's lived in the United States for decades. She doesn't feel super comfortable writing in English like a memoir, but she wants to tell her family story, and they directed her to me because she thought she wanted to write it as a screenplay, which of course is a lot briefer in terms of the language that you use on the page. So we started to work together, and I was trying to come up with a way to communicate that didn't require me to write just tons of material for her, because she feels uncomfortable speaking on the phone or on Zoom. And I realized the way to get over this was to do audio recordings, was for me to prepare brief audio recordings that really sum up the things that I want to talk to her about in terms of telling her story and how we're going to organize it and structure it and talk about characters. And it was a good exercise for me because I knew it was going to be too much text, just way too much to read. And even the funny thing too, now that I think about it, in screenwriting or short story or anything, when you use dialogue, the point of dialogue is to push your story forward really quickly within a few words that are in quotation marks, right? So that's how, I mean, dialogue is a tool in that way. It sort of propels you forward in a scene or in a story. So, here we are talking about this. I'm coming up with ideas while we're talking. I think talking is a really good process when we're going to isolate it down to 300 words on your website landing page. Let's hope you've talked out a few thousand first.
How do you keep it interesting?
Which part?
Just any article, any blog. How do you intentionally make sure that you're still grabbing the reader? Are there little tricks, little things that you can do to just keep it going, to get them to the bottom of the page, I guess?
Yeah, well, I would first say one thing that won't engage people is pure AI generated text. And
thank you so much for saying that.
It's just the truth. I've been experimenting with it because I need to understand how it works. I can't help people if I don't know how the current technology works, right? There are things you can do with AI that are extremely helpful, like transcribing interviews and getting bullet point, summarizations from an interview. It's saved me hours. Like, there are things you can really use it for. I would say AI generated content is boring, is uninteresting, uses a lot of the same language over and over, and same sentence construction. So that's one way to avoid, being boring. But let's just say in the active tense, one way to keep people engaged is to use the active tense. To be present and active tense writing is always helpful. Engaging, it feels immediate. Dialogue, like I said, is helpful. It gives a voice. It steps out of the sort of paragraph form and jumps into voice. There are characters and scenes and, visual language, metaphors, literary tricks that, we're not trying to write huge novels, in a blog post, but you can use so many of the tools that people really enjoy in storytelling, in short stories, in fiction. We talked last time or a few times ago about using the tools of fiction to write nonfiction so that it's also engaging and isn't just dry, autobiography.
We haven't gotten into, because this is not what this discussion is about, the deepness of SEO, the tags, the title tags, the meta description, etc. This is more about the content. But I want to spin back to the AI. I've experimented as well. And even on our team, I've had, some experimentation with even posts for social. And I don't want to call it a fail, but it is just, we're not there yet. And when it comes to AI, it can help you. It's, I call it a foundation. If you want to use it to start a story, start an article, have something to work from, you might find a couple of words. You might find a different camera angle, so to speak, to look at what you're trying to write about. But you can't just rely on it, because it is just, I find, fluffy. Sometimes it gets boring. Sometimes it's too formal. Fun to play with, but we're not there yet in terms of.
I agree. Right? I totally agree. And I think, I think a lot of us in the writing game, the business, we're afraid and have reason to be afraid. Place. However, I just don't think that's the case. I think it's going to quickly rise and fall in terms of its shine. Newness right now, like people want to use it for everything because it does kind of take a lot off your plate. But ultimately, you'll start to notice the redundancy of the phrasing, of the language, of the subject matter. I mean, I've been seeing it for a while, and it just it's just a turn off. But I guess it does work, for an SEO. But I think in terms of what you were saying with the keywords and meta tags and alt tags, I mean, that is really sort of the tech side, and that is really more for your web designer or, web host to plant those things.
Sure.
But they don't know what to plant if you don't give it to them. And I could say the same about ChatGPT or AI. It doesn't really know what to do until you've given it to do something. So it still will always revert back to the human, to the individual, their experiences, their point of view, their voice, and what it is. And again, this word, the offerings. What are you offering? What are you there for? Why should we listen to you? Or why should we hire you? Why should I give you my money?
Totally.
Right? So, I mean, there has to be a real feeling of trust. I think, unfortunately, that's why so many people you've heard of, and I know, who've been scammed by things that they thought were real that just weren't. And it's just it's really a time to be genuine and clear, succinct, as you said, and transparent.
And also, why did you waste my time?
Yeah.
That's the other one. And you never want to do that, because once you lose them, it's my belief that you've lost them.
Yeah.
What's the best way to connect with you, Michelle? Somebody's looking to improve the content on their website. And again, you offer so much, even right down to if somebody's working on a proposal. We're not even web connected, but you're somebody that can help with that journey, be the final look at something before somebody submits it, all of that. Anything related to, I say, communication, words, all of that. What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, through my website, which is www.michellecutler.com, MICHELLECUTLER. And, even if you want to take a look at it, a little browse through to reflect upon the things we were just talking about, see how many times I use the word story. I mean, it's everywhere. And I felt very uncomfortable about doing that as a writer. I thought, oh my gosh. But, that's how it is organic to the topic of what I do. So, it's a journey. As you said, it's a journey. But at a certain point, you come out with, who you are. It's like crafting a figure out of stone.
And it's funny, when we first started getting together, I checked out your website. So it's been a while. I'm going to go there with the intention of looking how things were done. Different set of eyes, if you will.
Yeah.
And looking forward to it. Wow.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much for today. Learned a lot. I think we shared a lot of important information because I think many just believe, well, I'll just throw a blog up on my website. I'll do another one. And there's, again, the word is intention. You have to set that intention for the content and also for the best SEO. And always great talking with you, Michelle.
You too. You too. It's a pleasure.
Same here. And we'll catch up next time. Okay.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Of course my kid's in the right car seat. Well, I think he is.
Yeah, my kid's in a booster seat. He was ready to move up. He is ready, right?
Her car seat looks like the right size.
There are probably rules on when to move up to a booster seat, aren't there?
Rear facing, forward facing? I think I have it right.
Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Are your children in the right car seat for their age and size? Don't think you know you know. Go to safercar.gov/the right seat.
I know my child's in the right car seat, or else I wouldn't get in the driver's seat.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.